Hey, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Enhancing the Human Experience. I'm Mark, and I'm really glad you're here. So in this episode, we're going to be talking all about how to know if you're on the right track, right? And how to ask for guidance from your intuition, which is really the only thing you want to ask for guidance for. And we'll talk about why you don't want to ask your mind, your race mind, later in the podcast here, and why that's problematic. But before we get into the show, I just want to remind you that if you missed last week's episode, it was all about the Rainmaker, one of my favorite stories about tuning in to the presence of God within you, the presence of divine intelligence within you before you do anything else. And oftentimes, as the Rainmaker story illustrates, that's enough, right? Once you do that and you're in flow, you're in alignment, then the good things are going to happen, and you don't have to know what's going to happen. You don't have to try to make the rain or to create the monetary income or create the relationships. Once you're in alignment with the divine, then everything just happens automatically in the best way for all included, or for all involved in that situation. So that's really, really powerful. If you missed that, you can check it out either on my website, gmarkphillips.com, or through any of your favorite podcast listening apps, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube. I'm a little behind getting them up onto YouTube. There are some episodes up there, but that's on my to-do list. So, you can check those venues. So that was last week's show, but let's get back to this week's show. Really powerful implications for this, right? Asking for guidance. Now, this is, I think women. Okay, I'm gonna be sexist here, and I'm gonna be kind of make some generalities. So don't hold this against me. But I think men have a more difficult time doing this than women. And I'm not going to get into why, who knows why, right? I think women are much more receptive just from an energetic standpoint and open to the guidance, right? Men tend to get kind of stuck in their heads and like, I know the way to what I want to do, to where I want to go, and I don't need any guidance, right? It's the classic joke that men never stop to ask for direction, and they just get lost and more lost and more lost, and it just goes on and on, right? Until finally they break down and ask for directions, and it's like way too late, right? The classic joke. There's truth to that. And I think it has something to do with it could be perceived as a sign of weakness or, not knowing, right? And no one wants to humble themselves per se and say, I don't know where I'm going, right? But unfortunately, we have to do that, right? We have to do that if we want to get to the best destination for us, to the destination that we're meant to get to, right? And so I think it's really important. So if you're a man listening, just know that, hey, you got to humble yourself and ask for these directions. And hey, I'm speaking from experience. I have that mindset too of, I know where I'm going and I'm going to hammer it out regardless of how much of a struggle it is, right? And we have a tendency, us men, to not want to ask for help. And that's problematic, especially in this case here. Any area of life, it's problematic, right? There's one thing to be self-sufficient and self-reliant, but there's another aspect of, hey, ask for help. I mean, this is where mentors come in and gurus come in. It's the human experience is designed for that, so we need to do that. A little bit of a tangent there on the gender roles, right? But I do think women have a little easier time doing this, and so we men need to kind of build this up for ourselves, right? Humble ourselves, ask for direction. So before we get into how we do it, we talked a little bit about why, because we need to get to our destination. And the other aspect of why is that if we only rely on our race mind, mortal mind to give us the guidance, it's a big problem, big problem for a couple different reasons. The main one being that our mortal mind only knows what it knows, right? It doesn't know what it doesn't know. And the problem is, if we want to take a quantum leap and a jump onto the right path, we have to have like a total perspective. And the only entity that can give us a total perspective is our intuition, our body wisdom, divine intelligence, sending us messages, which we're always plugged into that. But going back to the stubbornness, we can deny help, right? Just like a stubborn little kid can deny help from his parents on how to do anything, right? I'm going to do it. I don't need anyone's help. It's just going to delay a lot of growth and like expansion. And we don't have time for that as human beings, right? Life needs to be moving forward at all times. We don't have time to be stubborn and stuck in our ways and not take advantage of the help and assistance that is there for us. It's designed like that, right? This is why human beings have that available to them, that divine guidance. So we don't want to ask the mind, because that's not what the mind is made to do. And I'm speaking of race mind, mortal mind, the mind that is the intellectual mind from this world, right? Your intelligence, the intelligence that you have right now, anything in this world, we don't want to rely too much upon, because it's prone toward all sorts of like wild throws this way and that way. And it's just, it's prone towards attaching to certain things, maybe fads or cultural things or societal things, or it wants acceptance. It doesn't want acceptance. It looks at what your neighbor's doing and saying, well, you should do that, or what your cousin did and you should do that. And so it's very prone toward wild shifts, and it's not grounded, it's not rooted in divine truth, right? It doesn't know that, because all it does is take in the information around it and say, hey, well, everyone's doing this, you should do it too. And this is where you get into herd mentality. It's a big problem, right? That's why we don't want to ask the race mind any type of big life questions, right? Because we're going to get crazy answers. It's not designed to do those kind of questions, right? And so we want to transcend it. And the way to transcend it is by asking our intuition. And in a moment here, I'm going to share some of what Florence Scovel Shinn, some of her advice and instruction on asking for guidance. She's like the guru, right? I've mentioned her before in other podcasts. I'm going to be reading today from, again, one of my favorite books, The Game of Life and How to Play It. And she's all about asking and opening the channel for guidance. And so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But before we get to that, let's just get into, why we do need to do it. It's just to open up that channel and make sure that we're on the right direction here and right path. So when we know that when we know we're off the path, we can sense it, right? And we have to humble ourselves and ask for this guidance. And when we do that, everything is going to open up for us. So let's get into some of the things that Florence Scovel Shinn said here. And incidentally, one of my favorite quotes, and it's the quote of the week here from Einstein. And he said, hey, let me make sure I got it right here. I want to read the exact to you. He said, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift, right? And that sums up the human experience, at least for our culture and our society. I know that certain societies, do look a lot toward more the intuitive mind, right? But as far as like Western civilization, it was like built upon the race mind, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we're leaving a lot on the table, right? If we don't bring in the intuitive mind, we're leaving a lot of help on the table, because again, the rational mind only knows what it knows. And that's a problem, because everything the unseen is out there, right? There's more behind that. So let's get into Florence Scovel Shinn and some of the things that she says, because she was like the queen of designing questions to open up guidance, right? And let's see here. She says stuff like, intuition is a spiritual faculty and does not explain, but simply points the way. And that's what we want, is that guidance. So she knows that, hey, it's not here to like explain the theory of life and the mysteries of life. It's just going to point you in the right direction. And then you have to take the steps to get there. That's where we have to step up and say, okay, I'm going to do it. And one of the like affirmations, or I call them like healing sentences or healing words that she uses, is this. And you can use this if you're ever unsure if you're on the right path, or to always ensure that you're on the right path. Let's put it that way. So she says this. This is one of the things that she's designed. And she says, I am always under direct inspiration. I make right decisions quickly. So that's one of her affirmations to ensure that you're always in tune, because ideally we want to always be in tune and in flow so that we can react in the best possible way, right? At all points in time. And I want to go off on a tangent here. I recently picked up a book on strategic intuition for business. And that guy, his name is James Wanless, and it's all about tarot and intuition for business and applying that. And again, accessing the intuition and wisdom from within. And to kind of speak to Florence Scovel Shinn's quote here, he says that we will eventually have to become more intuitive in order to keep up with the technological advances and the speed at which business is moving, right? Our race mind is already becoming overloaded and already starting to fritz out, right? We're already burning up the circuit of the race mind and transcending that, and eventually it'll fall away. And obviously all this is designed to happen, right? As the evolution of human beings and our consciousness goes up, we're going to have to shed off anything that can't keep up. And I'll tell you what can't keep up. That is mortal mind, right? It wasn't designed to operate at this light speed that the technology is advancing to. Only intuition can do that because it's infinite and it's plugged into everything that we need. So it's kind of for the greater good that we're kind of becoming overloaded in technological advances and the internet and social media, and everything's kind of the circuit's going to blow soon, and it needs to blow, right? It needs to blow, and we have to shed off that mortal mind, the race mind. But so here's another thing what Florence Scovel Shinn said, and she says this: as man opens his mind to subjectivity, he becomes a target for destructive forces. The psychic plane is the result of man's mortal thought, and is on the plane of opposites. He may receive either good or bad messages. So this is speaking to the reason that we don't want to ask the mortal mind for direction and guidance, right? Because back to what I was alluding to is that it's prone toward giving you wrong answers, because on the plane of physical plane, everything's always shifting, right? And it's all in flux. It's all kind of a mess. It's a divine mess, but it's a mess nonetheless, right? We don't want to ever plant our stake and build our house on the shifting sands of this physical plane, because it's not good for long-term longevity. So that's why we don't want to do that. But so that's kind of what Florence Scovel Shinn said. And like I said, if you haven't checked out her book and you're wanting some divine guidance, inspiration, understanding of what really is going on behind the scenes and how to tap into it, I really recommend you pick that book up. It's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. It was published in her heyday. It's her most famous book. It was published in 1925 when she was rocking and rolling. And it's just great knowledge and great wisdom that's kind of on the other side of the physical plane. So it's really, really good. So that's the show. I hope that's been helpful. If you, like I said, if you want to check out more of her stuff, I really highly recommend you do that. So we'll end it there. I want to thank you very much for listening. I hope it's been helpful. And until next time, all the best, health, wealth, and success. Bye-bye.